25, and I want you to notice verse number 10. Then said Paul, I stand at Caesar's judgment seat where I ought to be judged. The title of the sermon tonight is, Where I Ought to be Judged. Where I ought to be judged. Now, I'm going to use this where we ought to be judged as the, the primary teaching I want you to think about tonight. But before I get into that, obviously we want to go through the story. We want to understand what's going on. And so I'll give my commentary to the story that we're reading here. Just pull out a few lessons, but I want to really focus in on the idea that we need to be judged where we ought to be judged and not be judged where we ought not to be judged. And so let's start there, verse number 1. It says, now when Festus, by the way, is the governor of this region. Now when Festus was come into the province, after 3 days he ascended from Caesarea to Jerusalem. Now we've covered this already in the book of Acts. Caesarea is north of Jerusalem. But every time they're traveling to Jerusalem, the Bible speaks about them, as it says here, ascending or traveling up to Jerusalem. Because as far as the demographics of the land, it's an incline to make your way to Jerusalem. So Festus has come, he's the new governor of the province, and now he decides, after 3 days, I'm going to go to Jerusalem, okay? Now, very quickly, just to remind you what we're up to here, come back with me to the previous chapter in Acts 24. Remember that Paul is under house arrest. He's been taken into Caesarea to be judged by the governor Felix. And it says in Acts 24, verse 27, it says, but after 2 years, Porcius Festus came into Felix's room. And Felix, willing to show the Jews a pleasure, left Paul bound. So we saw that Paul was bound for 2 years. Festus was the original governor, and now there's been a transition of power, or a transition of governors, and now, Felix was the previous governor. Now Festus is the governor of this region, okay? So he kind of inherits Paul being imprisoned under house arrest. Like, he inherits this problem, okay? So now that Festus is on the scene, back in Acts 25, after 3 days, he goes and just visits the region, and he goes into Jerusalem. In verse number 2, Acts 25, verse number 2, then the high priest and the chief of the Jews informed him against Paul and besought him and desired favor against him, that he would send him to Jerusalem, laying wait in the way to kill him. All right, so they weren't successful with Felix to send Paul to Jerusalem because the Jews want to kill Paul. We've seen this numerous times, okay? This is why Paul is under arrest or being held by the Romans, because even the Roman captain at the time knew that the Jews were trying to kill Paul. And so they're trying to protect Paul because he's a Roman citizen. He deserves his time in court. He needs to go through proper proceedings. He can't just be given away, taken outside of the authority of Rome and be killed for no reason, okay? And so I guess that the high priest and the Jews at this point recognized there's a new governor in town. Maybe we'll get our way now, right? Maybe Festus will deliver Paul into our hands and we'll kill Paul when we finally get a hold of him. Look at verse number 4. But Festus answered that Paul should be kept at Caesarea and that he himself would depart shortly thither. Let them therefore, said he, which among you are able, go down with me and accuse this man if there be any wickedness in him. All right, so there's a bit of a power play here, right? Again, Festus is the new governor. He's trying to just visit the region, goes to Jerusalem. The high priest are like, hey, you guys got a prisoner there, Paul, right? Can you please release him into our hands? And Festus is like, no, hold on. Like, I feel what I can see is a bit of a, getting to know each other, where are your strengths, who's got power in these different areas. And Festus is like, look, I'm not giving up my power. If you want to come and see Paul, you want to accuse him of anything, you come with me to Caesarea. I'm about to head shortly. If there's anyone that has anything to say against this man, Paul, come with me and we'll sort it out there in Caesarea. All right, verse number 5. I read verse number 5. Okay, verse number 6. And when he had tarried among them more than 10 days, he went down unto Caesarea, and the next day, sitting on the judgment seat, commanded Paul to be brought. Okay, so it's all happening now, right? Festus, the new governor, he's getting all the information fresh. All right, let's see what this issue is. Why do we have Paul under house arrest for 2 years? What's going on? He's ready to pass judgment in this situation. All right? I hope you're following along with the story so far. And verse number 7. And when he was come, that's when Paul was come, the Jews which came down from Jerusalem stood round about and laid many and grievous complaints against Paul, look at this, which they could not prove. Which they could not prove. So instead of using a prosecutor this time, I remember they had a prosecutor last time, instead they decided, look, now we've got some of these Jews, we'll all say some nasty things, we'll all make accusations against Paul. And brethren, this is something that we need to learn, and I've been saying this throughout the last few chapters. Just because someone has many accusations does not mean it's true. Okay? Every accusation, if we're going to judge a man based on accusations, we need to investigate. Okay? We need to find proof that, these accusations are true. Now, if you can, keep your finger there and come with me to Deuteronomy. Come with me to Deuteronomy chapter 19, please. Deuteronomy chapter 19. There is something in man, and I have it too. I'm not saying that I can't be fooled, but there is something in man, I don't know what it is, it's within us all, that if we hear an accusation, we think there's truth. Like, it's almost like this immediate thing that in our heart, in our mind, we think there's truth. Let's say, for example, let's say Brother Michael is fighting at church with Brother Jason, all right? The first one that comes to me and says, Brother so-and-so is horrible, I'm partly going to believe it. Because in my mind, I'm thinking, why would you make such an accusation? Right? And let's say everybody at church turns around and says, Pastor, Brother Jason's a horrible man. He's done all these horrible things. I'm going to think, well, by the weight of everybody saying this, it must be true. There's going to be an element in me that thinks that, processes that. The book of Proverbs, I wish I had the reference, it just came to my mind. I'm going to just paraphrase it, but it basically says something along the lines of that, how's it go? Maybe you guys know it. It says something like, whichever the first party to make the accusation is believed to be true. It's not necessarily true, but it's kind of believed. The first one to say something is generally believed to be true, even though it could be a bold-faced lie. And we also understand that the bulk of accusations, if everybody's saying this one thing, surely it must be true. Pastor, doesn't the Bible say where there are 2 or 3 witnesses, that person then is guilty? Well, no. But we do need 2 or 3 witnesses before we begin any kind of inquiry, any kind of procedure, any kind of process of judgment. We must have at least 2 or 3 witnesses to begin such a procedure. And the book of Deuteronomy, I love this passage, by the way, but Deuteronomy 19 and verse number 15, 1 witness shall not rise up against a man for any iniquity or for any sin, in any sin that he sinneth, at the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, or at the mouth of 2 witnesses, or at the mouth of 3 witnesses, shall the matter be established. Now, some people read that, the matter's established. That means it's proven that he's guilty. No. It means that the matter is now established to go through a proper process of inquiry, a proper process of trial, a proper process of hearing out the accusations, finding the proof, and then making a judgment call. Because it continues in verse number 16, if a false witness rise up against any man, to testify against him that which is wrong. So is the Bible telling us that within these 2 or 3 witnesses, there might be a false witness? Yeah. Is it telling us that 2 or 3 witnesses might be false? Yes. So we have to understand that we can't just judge a man based on witnesses. We need to go through proper procedure because the witnesses might be lying. Verse number 17. Then both the men between whom the controversy is shall stand before the Lord, before the priests and the judges, which shall be in those days, and the judges shall make diligent inquisition. And behold, if the witness be a false witness, and have testified falsely against his brother, then shall ye do unto him as he had thought to have done unto his brother, so shalt thou put the evil away from among you. What is the evil? False witness. You're putting away the false witness, right? Let's say a church situation, there's a conflict. Like I said, brother, I hope you guys don't mind, Brother Jason, Brother Michael. And Brother Michael's accusation is strong enough to warrant for Brother Jason to be kicked out of church, let's say. And let's say I find out, don't get offended, brother, I'm just using examples. All right, we find out that Brother Michael was lying this whole time. Okay, and that Brother Jason's innocent. Maybe not fully innocent, he did something wrong, but not deserving to be kicked out of the church, and the whole accusation's been exaggerated, and, falsehoods have been added to, for deception purposes. Well, if the accusation was true and might have caused Brother Jason to be kicked out of church, well, when we find out it's a lie, guess what? Brother Michael is the one that gets kicked out of church. And look at verse number 20. And those which remain shall hear and fear, and shall henceforth commit no more such evil, any such evil among you. And thine eye shall not pity. Don't feel sorry for the false witness. Don't feel sorry for the one that did evil, if it's the one being accused as well, if it's proven to be him. Don't have pity. But life shall go for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot. This basically means that the punishment must equal the crime or the offense that was committed. And if you're trying by false witness, trying to cause someone to be punished, and you're a liar, then you deserve equal punishment, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, foot for foot, etc., etc., as we see in the Bible. This is a wonderful system that God has created. Man, I would be afraid to just give a false witness. Like, if as much as I hate someone, I'm going to lie to get them in trouble. I'm going to be afraid. What if they find out? I'm not just going to get a slap on the wrist. I'm going to face the same consequence to the person that I'm trying to get, incriminated for whatever act. So, with that in mind, I just want to show you what God's word says, okay? And I want you to understand that within your nature and my nature, when we start hearing accusations, our immediate thought is there must be truth to it. Maybe there is truth to it. But I need you to understand there can be false witnesses. There can be exaggerations. Maybe there was an offense, but the way it's been communicated might cause you to think it's a much greater issue. Isn't that the saying, the storm in the teacup, right? It's a little problem that can be contained in a teacup, but when you look inside the teacup, it's like this massive storm, right? I mean, it's been blown out of proportion. Well, let's go back to the story now in Acts 25. Acts 25. We saw in verse number 7 they could not prove these accusations. Verse number 8. While he answered for himself. So now Paul responds. Neither against the law of the Jews, neither against the temple, nor yet against Caesar, have I offended anything at all. I didn't do anything against the Jews' traditions and their laws. I've not defiled the temple. Remember he had corrupted or defiled the temple. I've done nothing to hurt the temple, and I've done nothing against Roman laws or against Caesar. Verse number 9. But Festus, willing to do the Jews a pleasure, answered Paul and said, Wilt thou go up to Jerusalem, and there be judged of these things before me? What Festus is basically conceding with that question is that, you've not done anything worthy of being punished by Roman law. So maybe if you go to Jerusalem, we'll find a fault with you there. And then verse number 10. And look, Paul knows, if I go to Jerusalem, they'll kill me. Remember, God's been warning, God warned Paul, right? Don't go to Jerusalem the whole time before he even got there, right? They're still seeking to kill him, right? So, of course, Paul's not going to I want to go to Jerusalem now, after he knows about all this conspiracy to kill him. So this is how Paul answers in verse number 10. Then said Paul, I stand at Caesar's judgment seat, where I ought to be judged. To the Jews have I done no wrong, as thou very well knowest. He goes, look, if I'm going to be judged, I'm going to be judged in the right place, okay, where I ought to be judged. It is not for the Jews and the high priest to judge me. Remember, they had accused him of sedition. They had accused him that he was rising up and rebelling against the authorities. He goes, where's the evidence? And now you want me to be judged by the Jews? Hey, if the accusations against me are that I'm against the Roman Empire and against the Roman authorities, then I should be judged by Rome. Not taken to someone else, some other group, to judge me on a matter that has nothing to do with them. And by the way, we should not be judging matters that have nothing to do with us. There are proper places, proper procedures, proper boundaries that God has created to pass judgment. You know, passing judgment is one of my favorite topics to preach on. I'll just be honest, like it's one of my favorite topics because I feel like it's kind of misunderstood. You know, the Bible speaks a lot about judging, and I'm all for judging, but the Bible also sometimes speaks about not judging. And, you know, why dost thou judge thy brother? We're all going to stand before the judgment seat of Christ. And then people get confused. So am I supposed to judge or not judge? You're always meant to judge if it's in the proper area. If you've been given authority in that situation. If you've been called as a judge in that situation, it is right for you to judge. But if it's got nothing to do with it, leave it alone. It's got nothing to do with you. And that's what we're going to talk about at the end of this chapter, right? Let's keep going. Verse number 11. For if I be an offender or have committed anything worthy of death, I refuse not to die. But if there be none of these things whereof they accuse me, no man may deliver me unto them. I appeal unto Caesar. He appeals. He wants it to go to a higher level. Let's take it all the way to Caesar. Let's take this case all the way to Rome. All right, so Paul's confident, man. You're going to find nothing about, no issues whatsoever. You haven't found any issues about me. There is nothing. There's no proof that I've done anything wrong. I appeal unto Caesar. But look, I refuse not to. If I've done something worthy of death, then kill me. If there truly is something. If not, then I appeal to Caesar. Okay, again, he's using his Roman rights as a citizen to make sure he doesn't get delivered into the hands of the Jews who are going to kill him. I mean, it's kind of like he's stuck between a rock and a hard place. Neither are great. I mean, it doesn't need to go to the high courts when he's done nothing wrong. What a waste of time when he's trying to start churches and win souls. But then, do I go to Jerusalem and get this settled? I mean, what if I get killed? It's like, I guess you just got to make the best. you got to choose one or the other, right? Which one's going to be the best for me in the long run? So maybe going to Rome. Jesus says I'm going to Rome anyway. Maybe this is the way I'm going to get to Rome. All right? And verse number 12. Then Festus, when he had conferred with the council, answered, Hast thou appealed unto Caesar? Unto Caesar shalt thou go. And after certain days, King Agrippa and Bernice came unto Caesarea to salute Festus. All right, so just very quickly to let you know what's happening here. So Festus, I don't think he wants Paul to go to Rome, like to appeal to Caesar. So he gets to his council, gets together, and he's like, guys, like, what do we do? And I guess they're just reminding Festus, look, he made, he's got his right. He's got the right to go to Caesar if he wants, and we got nothing to say about it. Like, if Caesar hears about it, that we haven't allowed him his day in court before Caesar, we can get into trouble. So it's like, all right, almost, I don't know, sarcastically or something like unto Caesar thou shalt go. I don't think he really, yeah, man, this is such a good idea. In fact, as we keep going at this chapter, you'll see that Festus is not comfortable with the idea of bringing Paul to Caesar. But anyway, now we have kings of Judea. King Agrippa and Bernice, his wife. They came into Caesarea from Jerusalem, I suppose, to salute Festus. Now, King Agrippa, in fact, let's go to it. Acts chapter 12, please. Come with me to Acts 12. Just so you know who King Agrippa is. Acts 12, we're going to read about his dad. Just a reminder, you guys probably know the story about his dad. But in Acts 12:21, King Herod Agrippa, the Agrippa that we're reading about in Acts 25 is Agrippa II, okay? King Herod Agrippa the first is the one we're reading about here in Acts 12. Acts 12:21. And upon a set day, Herod, that's Herod Agrippa, arrayed in royal apparel, sat upon his throne and made an oration unto them. And the people gave a shout, saying, "It is the voice of a God and not of a man." And immediately the angel of the Lord smote him, because he gave not God the glory, and he was eaten of worms and gave up the ghost. Right? So you might remember that story, right? This man thinks of himself as a god. Instead of glorifying God and praising God, he praises himself. God kills him, and he gets eaten up by worms. I don't know. I guess they come out of his eyes, come out of his mouth. They just consume his body suddenly, right? This miraculous death that takes place. Anyway, so now that his dad died, now we've got King Agrippa II. He's in charge, right? He's the guy. He's the king over Judea at this point in time. So come back with me to Acts 25. Acts 25 and verse number 14. So I guess King Agrippa's just coming to meet the new governor, right? That's what they do, these powerful people, these politicians. They meet and greet and whatever. And then verse number 14. And when they had been there many days, Festus declared Paul's cause unto the king, saying, "There is a certain man left in bonds by Felix, about whom, when I was at Jerusalem, the chief priests and the elders of the Jews informed me, desiring to have judgment against him. To whom I answered, it is not a matter of the Romans to deliver any man to die, before that he which is accused have the accusers face to face, and have license to answer for himself concerning the crime laid against him." Right, so Festus is explaining to the king, look, I don't know what to do about this situation. Let me explain to you what's going on. Right? The Jews want me to kill him. I just can't kill a man. You can't just do that. He's got to face his accusers. He's got to be found guilty. Right? He's trying to explain the situation. Verse number 17. So he gets the help of King Agrippa. Verse number 17. Therefore, when they were come hither, without any delay on the morrow, I sat on the judgment seats and commanded the man to be brought forth, against whom, when the accusers stood up, they brought none accusation of such things as I supposed. So he says, look, there's nothing that was raised that is worthy of death. There's no proof that he deserves to die. Verse 19. But had certain questions against him of their own superstition, and of one Jesus, which was dead, whom Paul affirmed to be alive. He's like, the only thing they seem to have a problem with Paul is his teachings, and especially about this one Jesus. This guy's Jesus. That seems to be what bothers them about Paul, because that's not really worth killing a man over. Verse number 20. And because I doubted of such manner of questions, I asked him whether he would go to Jerusalem and there be judged of these matters. But when Paul had appealed to be reserved unto the hearing of Augustus, I commanded him to be kept till I might send him to Caesar. Then Agrippa said unto Festus, I would also hear the man myself. Tomorrow, said he, shalt thou hear him. All right, so Festus, Agrippa is interested. He goes, man, I want to hear about this story, right? Like, what is this situation? Why is he under arrest for 2 years? Why do the Jews want to kill him? Like, what? I want to hear this for myself, right? I mean, he's a Jew like me, I guess. I want to hear about this matter. All right, so they set up another situation where Paul can speak about his situation. And in verse number 23, it says, and on the morrow, the next day, when Agrippa was come, and Bernice, with great pomp, and was entered into the place of hearing with the chief captains, the principal men of the city, at Festus's commandment, Paul was brought forth. All right, so it's a big thing going on. I guess music, great pomp, like celebration. King Agrippa is here, his wife, and they will come in all, the chief captains and the soldiers are all there. Let's listen to what Paul has to say. Verse number 24. And Festus said, King Agrippa, and all men which are here present with us, ye see this man, about whom all the multitude of the Jews have dealt with me, both at Jerusalem and also here, crying that he ought not to live any longer. But when I found that he had committed nothing worthy of death, and that he himself had appealed to Augustus, I had determined to send him. Now, I don't want you to miss what Festus is saying. what he's saying here isn't accurate of what took place. The way he's wording it is, okay, I came to listen to Paul and the accusations made against, this is what he's saying, right? In this formal setting with the king. I heard what Paul had to say, and I just found him to be innocent. I don't find him guilty, worthy of death. But he appealed to Augustus. He appealed to Caesar. And now I've got this mess on my hands kind of thing. That's not quite accurate. He's trying to paint himself as this righteous judge. Yeah, I knew he was innocent. He's not guilty, i.e., I would have let him go. I would let him go, but now he's appealed to Caesar. Well, it's the other way around, right? It's like there was nothing to prove of him as guilty, so instead of saying, oh, he's guiltless, let's let him go, he's like, well, Paul, how about we send you back to Jerusalem then? He didn't include that part into it, all right? It's kind of like playing the games a little bit here, because it makes him look bad. Like, if the man's innocent, he's had his day in court, he finds nothing to accuse him of, he should let him go. But Paul's the one that's appealed to Caesar now. So, he's kind of playing the game a little bit here. Verse number 26. Of whom, this is so funny, of whom I have no certain thing to write unto my Lord, unto his Lord is Caesar. Wherefore I have brought him forth before you, and especially before thee, O King Agrippa, that after examination had, I might have something to write. For it seemeth to me unreasonable to send a prisoner, and not withal to signify the crimes laid against him. So what we learn here is that Festus doesn't really want to send him to Caesar because it's embarrassing. How do I send him to Caesar with no crimes? I can't even write all the crimes that he's, accused of, or, what am I going to write about? Well, the Jews in Jerusalem don't like him. He preaches about Jesus being resurrected when they claim to him to be dead. And if that comes to Caesar, it's like, what kind of stupidity did you bring to me? Right? So Festus is like, man, King Agrippa, can you help me out here? We need to write something in order to send him to Rome. And that's how the chapter ends. Okay? So we're going to find out more about Paul's answer when we read Acts 26. All right. But as I said, the title for the sermon tonight is Where I Ought to be Judged. Where I Ought to be Judged. Can you come with me to Matthew 18, please? Come with me to Matthew 18. Matthew 18. And one thing I really want to leave with you tonight, brethren, is that it's okay to not always know the answer if someone is guilty or innocent. Okay? When there are accusations made, we love to try to, well, is it true or is it false? My gut feel says it's true. I'm going to act upon it as though it's true. No. That's not the way we are to live as Christians. Okay, we need to make sure there is diligent inquiry. If the matter involves you, if you are involved in that situation, but if it's got nothing to do with you, leave it alone and let the proper authorities deal with it. Matthew 18, please. I just want to show you a few passages here. Matthew 18. Sometimes within church, and let me just quickly so you know the context of church. Look at Matthew 18, verse number 17. And if you neglect to hear them, tell it unto the church. I'll just stop there for a moment. I just want to tell you that what we're about to read is in the context of church. All right? Now, did you know that sometimes in church, we're going to step on each other's toes? You know that? I don't want to. I don't want you to step on my toes, and I don't want to step on your toes, but it happens. And sometimes there are people in church that do want to step on your toes. It's just human nature, okay? We're all sinners. We've all got different weaknesses that we struggle with. And sometimes at church, you're not going to get along with somebody. You know that? Well, when someone offends you at church, or if you offend someone at church, we get the process, okay? This is where we ought to judge the situation. Let me use, I'll use, since Brother Jason's left, maybe I offended him, I don't know. But I'll use Brother Michael and Brother Callum, all right? They have a dispute. Let's say Brother Callum, I hope you don't mind being the enemy this time, bad guy this time. Let's say Brother Callum did something really horrible to Brother Michael. I don't know, let's say he reversed his car out after church, scratched Michael's car, or maybe Michael drives a Tesla, And because that's what they do now with Teslas. You get a key and you key the Tesla because you're angry at Elon Musk or something, right? And Brother Michael, you're driving this Tesla. You'll never drive such a thing, I know that. But let's say he does, right? Scratches the car. Horrible, horrible. Bad behavior. And then Brother Michael gives me a call on Monday. Pastor, I need to tell you about something horrible that happened. I got to tell you about Brother Callum. He's a horrible person. Should I be, all right, brother, tell me. I'm all ears. Let me know. I can't wait to hear it. No. Let's read it. Matthew 18:15. Moreover, if thy brother shall trespass against thee, go and tell him his fault between thee and him alone. 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 Go and tell him his fault between thee and him alone. Why? Why? If he shall hear thee, thou hast gained thy brother. You know what God wants when we step on each other's toes? I probably shouldn't use the key in situation because that's you're damaging someone's property. That's actually a crime in the Bible, by the way. So that's not really what I'm talking about. Something, I don't know, Brother Callum said something, I don't know, to offend him, whatever. Well, Brother Michael, instead of going to Sister Prue, I'm going to tell you what happened last Sunday, right? What is Michael supposed to do? He's supposed to go to Callum alone, right? Let's sort this out, brother. No one else needs to know about it. Nobody, right? And the purpose is that they would gain the brother. They would restore their fellowship and their friendship. The purpose of this is not to get someone kicked out of church. Because a few times when someone has come up to me over the years, Pastor, I want to go through the Matthew 18 situation. Why? Because I think this person needs to get kicked out of church. You go through it because you're trying to gain your brother. You're trying to make peace, trying to sort out the problems. It's a shame if it gets to the point of the church. Okay? But this is the proper process. And brethren, I want you to, it's hard because we love conflicts and gossip, and I do too. And I have to force myself, no, I don't want to hear it. And it's hard because sometimes I've got to talk to you about something, Pastor. And I'm like, well, yeah, I'm a pastor. How can I help you? And then, no, I shouldn't be listening to this actually. And then you feel like, you just want to be a friend and you want to hear someone's issues and help them vet, but it's not the right place sometimes. And one thing I want you to learn, church, and especially young people, because young people, this seems to be harder for young people, but then if you don't learn it as a young person, you make the same mistakes as adults anyway, is when someone comes up to you and wants to just tell you how bad somebody is, listen, don't listen to it. Do it the biblical way. Satan, look, brother or sister, friend, I love you, I care about you, I'm praying for you, you need to sort this out. And you know what the Bible says? You need to, have you gone, maybe that's the question, have you gone one-on-one with brother so-and-so at church? Have you sorted out with them? Go and sort it. I don't need to hear it. I get it. I get there's some issue. Okay, I probably shouldn't even have gone this far. But you need to go and sort it out. I hope the best for you. We love to hear it. Oh, let me hear what I have to say. Let me hear the accusations. Oh, that must be true. And now I'm going to ignore that person at church as well. Because I heard brother so-and-so say this about that person. Well, first of all, you got one witness. The matter's not even established yet. You need 2 or 3. But first of all, you're supposed to say to that person, hey, have you raised that thing, that issue? Before you tell me about it, have you raised that issue with that person one-on-one, or have you not? And they'll give you one of the 2 answers. No, I haven't. All right, then go sort it out, bro. Go sort it out. Hope you guys sort it out. It's outside of my jurisdiction. It's got nothing to do with me. Or if they say, yes, I have, but we still haven't figured it out. All right. Well, the process is to get 2 witnesses, and we're going to read about that in a shortly, okay? Look at Matthew 18, verse number 16. But if he will not hear thee, then take with thee 1 or 2 more, that in the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, every word may be established. Again, the same language that we read in Deuteronomy 19. Does every word established mean that person is guilty? No. What are you establishing? That in the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, every word may be established. So when you have 2 people that are brought to a situation because it's been escalated, they've appealed to Caesar or they've appealed it to the next level. You can get 2 people at church. You can get me if you want as the pastor. You can get somebody that you believe will be unbiased, okay? And you have them listen. And you say, look, I need to bring the situation with this brother at church or this sister at church. And I need you guys to listen and let every word be established that gets spoken. And look, at this point, anything can happen. Anything can happen. The person that's been accused might, yeah, you're right, I was guilty. And they might say, I messed up. Brother, can you please forgive me? Let's sort it out. And to the 2 witnesses, can you give us some advice, give us some of your opinions, give me your judgment, right, of how we should make peace in this situation. Well, brother, you should pay for the repainting of his car since you scratched it, or whatever, right? You should not just pay for the repainting of his car, but while his car is getting repainted, you need to pay for him hiring a car to drive to work. Whatever the judgment is, right? Someone might say, yeah, I am the guilty party and I've done wrong. But I'm not willing to fix this because he's done some horrible things to me as well. Anything can happen. Like in that situation, anything can happen. Or you soon start to discover that the person that has been accused is trying to make peace with the brother. Yeah, man, let's sort this out. But the accuser, like I said, is trying to get them kicked out of church. So they're not wanting peace. They don't want a peaceful resolution. So they'll keep bringing up problems and issues and situations. And you've got the 2 witnesses that are establishing every word. Your witnesses not of who offended who. Your witnesses of not who's to blame for the situation. You're witnessing which of these 2 people are trying to sort it out and which one's not. Which one's not trying to gain his brother? Which one is trying to gain his brother? Are they both not trying to gain their brother, right? And so you end up with some type of conclusion, some type of judgment after you've heard the matter between those 2 people. Now, let me just continue in the example that I've given. Let's say the 2 men that witnessed the conversation say, yep, you're in the fault. You need to pay for the repainting of his car. You need to pay for that man to hire a vehicle to get to work as well. And that person says, no, I'm not going to do it. I don't agree with your judgment. All right, well, let's keep going. Verse number 17. And if he shall neglect to hear them, who's the them? The witnesses, okay? And if he shall neglect to hear them, tell it unto the church. But if he neglect to hear the church, let him be unto thee as an heathen man and a publican. A heathen man is supposed to be an unbeliever. Now, it's not saying he's an unbeliever, but let him be to you as an unbeliever. In other words, he's not someone that should be in fellowship with the church, all right? Or a publican, someone that is like people that hate it, like tax collectors, people that are trying to take advantage of other people. So you view that person, look, we've passed judgment, you're not making peace, we had the 2 witnesses, they've judged against you, we've brought it to the church, Pastor Kevin has judged against you, and you still don't want to sort this out, you still don't want to make peace, then to you, we're going to view you as an unbeliever, we're going to view you as someone trying to take advantage of our church members, so you're out of our church. And then look at verse number 18. Verily I say unto you, whatsoever you shall bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatsoever you shall loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven. God is saying whatever you agree to as a church, God gives the stamp of approval. Now, this is what happens. Could there be times where an innocent party, let's say a man gets kicked out of church, or a man is being accused and they did nothing wrong, and they go through the process, they go through the procedure, and it ends up that everyone thinks that the innocent man is guilty and he gets kicked out of church. It can happen, you know that? It can happen. You say, what about that situation, Pastor Kevin? Well, when it comes to judgment, this is something you need to understand. That whatever we judge as men, the ultimate judge above all things is God. God is the ultimate judge above all things. And I believe more than anything I believe, well, maybe there are other things I believe, but I strongly believe that God will balance the books. I've had situations where men are like, Pastor, I don't know how to sort this out. I'm being accused and I did nothing wrong. How do I make peace? And I've said, well, you know what? Why don't you just put your hand up and say, look, I believe I did nothing wrong, but I'm going to listen to the accusation. I'm going to accept that's what you thought I said or did, and I'm going to own it. I'm going to own that that's the accusation. And I just, look, I'm sorry. You know I did nothing wrong, but if that's truly what you think, then I'm sorry. Oh, but Pastor, I did nothing wrong. Yeah, but don't worry, God will see it. God will look down and he'll bless you. Like if I just believe God sees it all, and I know he does. And God sees when judgment is not passed correctly. God knows. And God will balance the books one way or another. And I think when I have that mindset that God is the judge above all things, I don't worry so much about, is that person guilty? Is that person innocent? You know, I don't believe that person's being judged properly. He'll be judged. Don't worry. He'll be judged and he'll be rewarded if he was innocent, you know, and he was incorrectly judged. Right? Or if his sentence was too lenient on the realm of men, God will make sure that his sentence meets the requirements. Somehow, somewhere, on this earth or the next, somehow it's all going to be sorted. And that makes it a lot easier. And let me say that, again, when you have two people, let's bring it to that situation. Two brothers fighting in church, two sisters fighting in church. And the two witnesses come, and it's like, I can't figure out who's lying and who's telling the truth. This person said he did that. That person says he didn't do it. Now it's his word versus his word. What do I do, Pastor? You know, you don't need to judge again who's guilty. You're passing judgment about how they're speaking to one another and who's trying to sort it out, who's trying to make peace, and who's trying to, you know, inflame the situation and make it worse. You know, and hurt friendships and hurt the church potentially. That's a judgment that you're going to pass. And if someone says, you know, let's say the two witnesses like, we judged, we can't find him guilty. And he seems to be trying to make peace with you. So we can't bring this any further. Now the situation becomes like the accuser. The accuser either accepts the judgment that we can't proceed any further. We got no evidence. It looks like, look, this person's trying to sort it out. You got to look. He's trying to sort it out. You sort it out, and that person has to make a decision. All right, let's sort this out then. I know he was wrong, but he's being let go free. All right, God sees it. If he's truly guilty, God will sort it out one way or another. But there's a proper procedure, right? The title for the sermon is Where I Ought to Be Judged. Well, let me tell you, if you guys have a fight, I'm not judging that situation until you go one-on-one with that individual and try to sort it out first. Can you come with me to Hebrews 13, please? Hebrews 13. Sometimes as a pastor, not very often, but sometimes I have to make an executive decision. You know that? Sometimes, based on the evidence put before me, a serious situation, I just have to make a call. And sometimes, as a pastor, but by the way, I've been given authority in the church, and I hope you recognize that as your pastor, I'm not trying to abuse my authority. I'm not trying to lord over the flock. I don't want to control your lives. I hope you look at me and say, hey, my pastor's just trying to be a blessing. trying to do the best he can. Right? I hope so. I hope that's the way you look at me. Well, in Hebrews 13:17, the Bible says, obey them that have the rule over you, and submit yourselves, for they watch for your souls, as they that must give account, that they may do it with joy and not with grief, for that is unprofitable for you. You know, I've been given the rule in the house of the Lord, and sometimes I need to make decisions, and I've had made decisions, executive decisions, and ask people to leave. And let me tell you, if I have to do something like that, and sometimes you know about it, and sometimes you don't know about it, because it depends on that individual. Sometimes that individual says humbly, yeah, you're right, Pastor, I need to get out of church for a while and sort myself out. I'm not going to embarrass that person to the whole church. But if a person digs in their heels and wants to cause problems and whatever, at some point I'm going to have to raise it to the whole church. But sometimes I have to make these executive decisions. And what happens every now and again is, but Pastor, did you go through the Matthew 18 process? Look, it's usually that person's done nothing to me, and I've done nothing to them. It's not a personal offense one with another. But I see that it's harming the church, or it can be harmful to the church. And the Bible says that I've got to watch for your souls. And so God gives me the rule in the house of the Lord. At times, you need to understand when I need to make an executive decision, and trust me that as the pastor, or submit yourselves, it says. Accept that as the man in authority at church, that's what I've got to do sometimes. And sometimes I can't give all the information because there are privacy issues. I've even had a situation once when someone was fearful of their life, and so you just can't spill the beans and put that person in a vulnerable position. But then people get upset. Oh, but Pastor, what are you saying? You can just make a decision whenever you want. Don't you know there are pastors that abuse their authority? There are pastors that, will just make their own decisions without, seeking the rest of the church's, feedback. Yeah, I acknowledge there are corrupt pastors. And so because there's corrupt pastors in the world, do we just take away all authority from pastors? Is that what we do? We've got to minimize the potential of corruption, Pastor Kevin, so you can't make the decisions. I know there are corrupt pastors. So do we just not have pastors? There are corrupt governments. Does that mean we just don't have governments? Do you know there are abusive fathers? Abusive husbands? Do we just not have husbands? Do we just remove all authority from husbands because out there somewhere there are abusive husbands that abuse their authority? There are abusive employers that abuse their staff, take advantage of the staff and not pay them what they promised and whatever. Does that mean we just don't have employers then? Because we need to get rid of all corruption? No business, no employees, no one employs anybody. Because somewhere out there in the middle, somewhere, someone gets corrupted and takes advantage of somebody. It's stupid. We follow what God says, right? What God's word says. And sometimes, brethren, I've got to pass judgments, but I'm passing judgment for the best of our church because I'm commanded to watch for our souls. That does not mean I can come into your house and pass judgment in your house. Pass judgment in your family. Husbands and wives fighting about whether they should go on holidays to Fiji or to, what's another place? Hawaii. Pastor, can't pass judgment between us. It's none of my business. In fact, the husband has the authority in that situation. Can you come with me to 1 Corinthians 6, please? 1 Corinthians 6. 1 Corinthians 6. Sorry if I go a bit over time, but it's an important topic, Passing judgment. Why are you going to pass judgment if it has nothing to do with you? Why are you going to pass judgment if you've not been made a judge of that situation? 1 Corinthians 6, please. Verse number 1. Dare any of you, having a matter against another, go to law before the unjust and not before the saints? So this is another situation. The Corinthian church is messed up. Everyone's fighting one with another, right? They're all carnal. I'm of Paul, I'm of Apollos, blah, blah, right? They're all fighting about their little doctrines and their favorite preachers. Verse number 2, it says, do you not know that the saints shall judge the world? And if the world shall be judged by you, are ye unworthy to judge the smallest matters? This is about judgment, passing judgment. This is about issues within a church, between brethren. But context, it's about small matters. Small matters. Okay? Verse number 3. Know ye not that we shall judge angels? How much more things that pertain to this life? If then ye have judgments of things pertaining to this life, set them to judge who are least esteemed in the church. Paul is saying it's better that you just get the most least esteemed. The person that you think has the least wisdom, the least recognition in the church, it's better that they judge your small matters than taking your brother to court. All right, so, and what I'm about to say has happened. I know of at least 2 situations in recent years. I feel like saying 3, but I can't remember the details of the third situation. Where someone in church has broken into someone else's house, like someone else in churches into their house. A brother has broken into another brother's house and stolen, damaged, right, by breaking in, damaged the house, stolen items, and has been caught by the fellow brother. What do we do in that situation? Let's get the least esteemed in the church. Let's have a look. Brother Samuel, you're probably the youngest that's saved, potentially. Let's get Samuel. How old is Samuel? 8? Let's get an 8-year-old to judge this situation. Samuel, what do you think? Brother Matthew broke into Sister Prue's vehicle. What judgment do you pass? You say, Pastor Kevin, that's crazy. Yeah, it's crazy. Because breaking into someone's property is not a small matter. It's a crime. It's a crime. It's a criminal offense. Not just in our country, but in the Bible. In God's word, it's a criminal offense. So what do we do when there's a criminal offense? That needs to be reported to the police. Title is Where I Ought to Be Judged. This situation is judged by the authorities, the governing authorities. But what happens is, brethren, read 1 Corinthians 6. I'll never go to law with my brother. So someone in church breaks into their house and steals money or whatever it is, right? And then you read, I guess I just got to forgive him, Pastor. Is that what I do? I just forgave him. And I'm not going to bring the matter to court. You know, he confessed he did wrong and he gave me back the money, so I just didn't pursue it any further. Is that the right thing to do? It's sad. Like, people think they're doing the right thing, but you're letting a thief go free. You're letting a thief go without consequence. An eye for an eye. Hand for hand. Foot for foot. It's not a small matter. It's a criminal offense. And you got to report that to the police. Don't come to me, Pastor Kevin, can you please judge in my situation? Brother Michael broke into my house. Can you please judge? No. You're bringing it to the wrong place. I've got no authority in that situation. You have to report it to the police. But Pastor Kevin, look, Romans 13 again. Romans 13, verse 3. For rulers are not a terror to good works, but to the evil, will thou then not be afraid of the power to do that which is good, for thou shalt have praise of the same? For he is the minister of God to thee for good. But if thou do that which is evil, be afraid, for he beareth not the sword in vain. For he, that's the government, is the minister of God, a revenger to execute wrath upon him that doeth evil. Wherefore ye must needs be subject, not only for wrath, but also for conscience sake. Oh, but Pastor, I don't want to press charges against my brother. I don't want to get it. I just want him to let him go free. I'll forgive him, all right. But he's not been punished. God's put the government in place to execute wrath and judgment over criminal offenses. You know why? So he learns the lesson and doesn't do it again. You let someone just go free, I broke his mouth, it's all good. All right, well, in 6 months, he might break into another family member's house. He might think everyone at church just lets me go free. So I'm going to get away. I got away with it. Next time, I've got to be more careful not to get caught. The guy's not punished because he wasn't judged in the place that he's got to be judged. And look, I can understand a situation where a brother breaks into my house. I just use that example because it happens. It's happened in churches that I know of, people that I know of. If you break into my house and I find out and you restore it, hey, maybe do the Bible principle, restore it 3 or 4 times. Yeah, I'll forgive you. I'll be like, brother, I forgive you. You did wrong, but I'm still going to report it to the police. It's not because I hate you. It's because that is the role of these authorities. They're the ones to judge this situation. I'm not the one prosecuting you. The state will prosecute you for the crime you've committed. But everything has its proper place. And you know what? Pastors get accused of all kinds of stuff all the time. And sometimes it's true, but most often they're not, they're lies. Most often they're not, they're lies. I'm going to end on this one, okay? And I'm sorry if I'm going over time. But you're probably all familiar with a pastor of old time, an old IFB pastor that's passed away now. His name is Jack Hyles. Does anyone know that name, Jack Hyles? A very famous IFB pastor, had an IFB church of maybe 5,000 people, I don't know, a few thousand. Very big church. And, there was one time someone accused me of being, what was I? A Hylesite? Or a Hyles follower? Or something. Like, I'm bad because Hyles was bad. I've never listened to one Jack Hyles sermon in my life. I've never read one of Jack Hyles' books ever in my life. Never. I may have come across a clip on Facebook or YouTube or something like that. Some, short few minute clip or something like that. I don't know. I can't even remember. I'm not even familiar with any of his sermons. I've heard the name. But the pastors that have influenced me have been the pastors that I've sat under. The pastors that I could talk to, and fellowship with, and see their example and see the work they would do in the ministry. Those are the pastors that have influenced my life. Anyway, someone didn't like me once and called me a Hyles, whatever. And the reason he called me a Hyles, whatever, is because Jack Hyles has these accusations that have been made against him. That he committed adultery with his secretary, that he tried to get his secretary to divorce her husband so they could be together. There are accusations of him covering up sexual abuse within the church. I believe that sexual abuse took place because, if you've got a few thousand people, all kinds of nonsense can happen. It's very easy for wicked people to creep into large churches like that. But the accusations are that he covered it up. First of all, if there is rape or something along these lines, it's getting reported to the police here at New Life Baptist Church. I don't need to cover up anything because I'm not the proper authority to deal with such a situation. It's a crime. So it's going to the authorities. But anyway, Jack Hyles has these accusations. And you know what? Even one of his own daughters comes out. I don't know the full story. I don't know all the details. I know of it, but I don't know all the details. But even one of his own daughters accuses her dad of being this horrible man, horrible pastor. So I look at a situation like that. And apparently this man had many salvations and I don't know. Apparently he had a worldwide influence with getting people saved. But then these accusations. And you know, anytime someone brings up the accusations to me, it's as though he's guilty. Man, it's horrible what happens to Jack Hyles. Don't you know this? I'm like, tell me about it. Well, you know, this is being said. Is there proof? Oh, well, everyone's talking about it. Even his own daughter. Must be true, Pastor Kevin. First of all, let me just say this. Maybe it is true. I don't know. But I don't know. It's not my jurisdiction. In fact, I've got nothing to do with it. Anyway, going back 6-7 months ago, spoke to a pastor friend that I have in the United States. Not in the new IFB, by the way. Another pastor friend that I have in the United States. And we're just talking about situations, ministry, and blah, blah, blah. And I don't know why he brought it up. He goes, you know, those accusations about Jack Hyles. And I'm like, yeah, sort of, you know. He's like, look, I want you to know something. My family and I, we know of the situation in depth. Like, we know the people that are making the accusations. We know the people. We've been in that inner circle, you know, for years and years and years. And he said to me, you know what, Kevin, none of those accusations are true. None of them. And he goes, look, I'm not even trying to defend Jack Hyles. Like, I don't have what do you say when you got like I haven't got I don't know, I'm trying to get a saying out here, but I haven't got a something in the game. I don't know. Whatever it is. I don't care. He goes, like, I don't really care. If he's guilty or anything, it doesn't bother me. But I can tell you that none of these accusations are true. What about the one with his daughter? It's all false. It's all lies. She's just bitter. She's upset about the way the family was raised under the pressure of the ministry, and, you know, all these things come out. Maybe he was an unattentive father. Maybe he neglected his family a little bit. Yeah, maybe. If his daughter's out to get him like that, potentially. But it's interesting that people still talk about this man to this day. I don't know when he passed away, probably over 10 years ago, 20 years ago. I have no idea. I don't know when he passed away, 20 years ago, maybe more. But most people that I come across just believe it to be true. And quite often when people get bitter against the independent fundamental Baptist movement, for whatever reason, Jack Hyles, you know, everyone's like Jack Hyles. It's like, I don't know. I go to church for Jesus. I go to church for his word. The pastors that have influenced me and taught me are the men that I've sat under. And my reading of God's word and the Holy Spirit guiding me into all truth. I don't know about Jack Hyles. But most people just, and his name is destroyed. From people that have nothing to do with the situation. Let's say he's innocent. I don't know if he is. Let's say what my pastor friend said to me is true, and that he's completely innocent. And people are bashing his name to this day. That, you know, he's tried to steal another man's wife, that he covered up sexual abuse. You say, well, judgment wasn't passed on the earth. Okay, but I believe judgment is being passed in heaven. I believe that man is earning rewards in heaven. If he's innocent. I don't know. I'm just giving you examples. Judgment, all the books are going to be balanced. God knows it all. God knows what's true. And if it's got nothing to do with me, I'm simply not going to pass judgment and just hope for the best for people that are my brothers in the Lord. Anyway, brethren, title for the sermon tonight is Where I Ought to Be Judged. Don't you want to be judged in the right place, by the right people? Of course. Then we should do the same for others when they're going through difficulties, when they're going through accusations. Let them be judged in the proper place, by the proper people, by the proper authorities. And even if things aren't balanced from a human point of view, God will balance all the books. All right, I hope that's been a blessing. Let's pray.